expressing reproach and regret. Sam is writing some captions for photos depicting wildlife conservation issues. Match the clauses to form correct sentences. Number 1. If offshore drilling hadn't been permitted in the Arctic, oil spills wouldn't have become a fact. Marine life. Number 2. If my grandfather had been aware that the medicine contains rhino horns, he wouldn't have used it. Number 3. If our appetite for meat hadn't increased, fewer trees would have been cut down for livestock farming. Number 4. If settlers had known that rapids would damage the ecosystem, they wouldn't have brought them to Australia. Expressing reproach and regret. What are type 0, 1, 2 conditional sentences? Do you remember that type 0, 1, and 2 conditional sentences are? If you hit ice, it melts. If he orders bluefin tuna, we will refuse to use it. If I had some money, I would donate it to the Wildlife Center. When do we use type 3 conditional sentences? If I had known bluefin tuna was endangered, I wouldn't have ordered it. Do these sentences express reproach or regret with a tick or cross? If I were you, I'd buy only sustainable palm oil product. If we had addressed the overfishing problem earlier, the situation would be so disastrous now. If a member of the herd dies, elephants mourn. If we don't stop lodging its habitat soon, the orangutan will become extinct. If I'd realized how poorly the animals were treated at the sanctuary, I wouldn't have visited. How do we form type 3 conditional sentences? We use the past perfect in the if clause and would not have plus past participle in the main clause. If the police had arrived earlier, they would have caught the thief. How do we form type 3 conditional sentences? We talk about the situation in the if clause and the possible results in the main clause. If he hadn't called for help, the baby elephant would have died. If I had known the coat was made of fur, I wouldn't have brought it. We can swap the order of the two clauses. If the government hadn't imposed stricter fines, more turtles would have died. More turtles would have died if the government hadn't imposed stricter fines. If the fishermen had modified their fishing net, they would have reduced the bycatch of endangered marine turtles. Climate change wouldn't have become such a problem if we hadn't cleared such a large area of forest. If I had realized you were going to research polar bears, I would have chosen another topic. Now, form type 3 conditional sentences using the information below. Use the pronouns where necessary. I was fit enough. I climbed a mountain. So talk about the imaginary result first. I would have climbed the mountain if I had been fit enough. This is just an imagination. So the reality that is that you did not climb the mountain. Now form type 3 conditional sentences using the information below. The world's nation didn't ban certain chemicals in 1987. The hole in the ozone layer didn't begin to heal. So we talk about the imagination first, okay? If the world's nations had banned certain chemicals in 1987, the hole in the ozone layer wouldn't have begun to heal. Let's put the things together. Anne and Tim are talking about Anne's Endangered Animal Project. Complete the conversation with the correct form of the verbs provided. How is the grammar used? We can use type 3 conditional sentences to describe imaginary situation. Is your project done? Yes, finally, I would have spent more time on it if I hadn't left it so late to get started. Sometimes we use it for expressing regret. Is your project done? Yes, finally, I would have spent more time on it if I hadn't left it so late to get started. Or reproach. I heard that there were many tigers in India once. Yes, in some areas, it was even official policy to destroy them. Bengal tigers probably won't have become endangered if this policy hadn't existed. We use the past perfect tense in the if clause and would plus have plus past participle in the main clause. When we talk about imaginary situation, we talk about the situation in the if clause. If I hadn't left it so late to get started, it's just the imaginary situation. Okay? Then you use, to talk about some imaginary situation, we use type 3 conditional sentence. And the possible results in the main clause. Possible result. If you had asked that a century ago, the answer would have been about 20,000. So put the if clause at the end of the sentence like this. Or at the beginning, if I'd encounter a tiger in the New Territories 100 years ago, so this is the imagination, all right? I would have felt absolutely terrified. Okay, this is about type 3 conditional sentences expressing reproach and regrets. Describe imaginary situation in the past. Thank you.